Um, so I just have a little talk this morning because you've had a long Bible reading. And Palm Sunday would be the day when churches would often process, with or without palms, with or without choirs. Sometimes they'd go around their whole village or their town. Sometimes in one of my churches, we just used to nip out the door, round the churchyard and back in again. That's fine, isn't it? And sometimes it would be called a kind of walk of witness. Witness is a strange title, isn't it? It gets changed to Palm Sunday procession because witness is a funny word. So I want to talk today about the next mark of being a Christian. We talked about believing in God and reading the Bible, praying, being in church, Jesus. But today I want to say that a Christian is someone who bears witness. Sorry, just let them back in. Who bears witness. And the first half I think you'll like, and the second you'll find challenging. So the word witness conjures up images of juries and courts, doesn't it? Call the first witness. But the word witness means to have been there, to give evidence to the facts, to testify. That is, to give testimony about something. So what are the facts that we are saying? What are we testifying to when we march with our palms? What's the evidence we want to declare? Well, the fact that there was a man called Jesus. And that this week, the Sabbath before the Passover, which is always the first full moon of the after the equinox and all the rest of it. So we know it's always this time. It actually is this week, this Sunday, 2,000 years ago, that Jesus entered Jerusalem on a donkey. The number of years, we're not sure, but I can tell you it was the week before Passover. He entered Jerusalem on a donkey, and the streets were thronged with people holding palms and throwing them on the road. Yeah. And these are the facts. This is what we declare. This is what we bear witness to. And in church circles, we bear witness to our faith as well, that he died and rose again and sent the Holy Spirit. As the hymn says, all of this bears witness, one church, one faith, one Lord. And the link between belief and testifying, between faith and witness, is there in the grit of the text, actually. When it says the disciples bore witness, the Greek word is martyreo, from which we get our word martyr from. So for the early church, to die for your faith was the ultimate way of declaring your faith in Jesus Christ. Nowadays, we get off quite lightly, don't we? You can imagine the conversation in heaven. Oh, what did you do to show people you were a Christian? Oh, I wore this little cross around my neck. Oh, I see. In my day, they chopped my head off. Oh, right. However we show our faith, though, by wearing a cross or by losing our life or by marching around at 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning with some palms, the thing is, this is the sixth mark of being a Christian, acting out our faith. Because it doesn't matter if you have the tiniest amount mustard seed or if you have confused the heck out of the creed and the world faiths. But if you want to be a Christian and if you think there's a God and that Jesus was real, you have to show that commitment in some way. You have to put your money where your mouth is. Because anyone can say, oh, I want to be environmentally friendly. And governments can say, oh, I'm going to reduce carbon emissions by blah, blah, blah %. But unless you do something to make that happen, unless you change or act in some way, it doesn't mean anything, does it? It's just cheap talk. So Christians have to act, have to show their faith. As our dear St. James says in his epistle, suppose your brother or sister has no clothes or food, and one of you says to them, well, go on, I hope everything turns out fine for you, keep warm, eat well, and you do nothing about what they really need. Then what good have you actually done? It's the same with our faith. If it doesn't cause us to do something, it's dead. Gosh, that St. James can be quite harsh, can't he? Faith has to cause us to do something. A Christian's not someone who just believes in a series of intellectual propositions in their head. It's not I believe that, it's I believe who. So you have to do something. It's like swimming. I mean, I've seen people who are amazing swimmers on land and they can tell you all the different strokes and how to do it. But until you get in the water, it doesn't mean anything. It's not swimming. Nothing you do on dry land is swimming. You have to do it in there. And when you are swimming, perhaps it doesn't matter if you know how to do the strokes, perhaps if you just splash around. And the great thing about swimming is that you can do it quite safely up to your knees, or, you know, that's fine. And if you want to, you can go out further, but you have to be in the water. And it's the same with faith. You have to bear witness to the relationship you have with Jesus, with God. You have to show your commitment. And some people say that witness, they like to use the word witness just for that kind of telling other people about how you came to faith and encouraging them to do the same. Oh, I witnessed to somebody today. Or our testimony is when we tell lots of people our story, like Billy Graham would get, I got someone to tell their testimony. And that's one way of bearing witness. But St. Francis said, share the gospel, use words if you must. Share the gospel, use words if you must. So the fun thing is that bearing witness, acting on our faith, can be in so many different ways, as many as there are people, as many as there are types of flower and plant that use different shapes and colors to turn the sun's rays into energy. Think of that diversity. So there's all different ways of acting on our faith, of sharing our faith. One of my favorite theologians, am I allowed to have favorites? I think so, says that going to church on a Sunday morning is our main act of bearing witness to our faith. This is pre-COVID times, but while the rest of the world goes to football practice or worships at a garden centre or stays in bed and reads the Sunday papers, in normal times, we walk or get on our bikes or get in our cars and go and do this thing. We make time for it. We are committed to it. It is showing our faith by what we do. I love it. And what about what St. James says? He says to care for widows and orphans, to look after the poor and hungry. This is the best way to show your faith, to share your faith. You know, no one remembers Mother Teresa for her sermons or her theology. I can think of one, but they know her faith by her care for others, don't they? So we do bear witness by coming to church or by showing God's love in action to others, by caring for people. But this is where you might find it a bit more challenging, because I do. St. Francis also said, share the gospel, use words if you must. So sometimes we do have to use words. Sometimes we need to speak. Like when they ask, why did you go to church? Or why are you standing in the street waving those palms? Or when they ask, how can you not be afraid in a pandemic? Then we have to do like St. Peter says, always be prepared to give an answer for the reason for the hope that you have. Give an answer for a reason that the hope you have within you. Because, you know, once upon a time, someone told you, and unless you stalked them to church, but even then, I think once you came inside, somebody must have told you something. And I know it's a terrifying thing, and it's so un-British to talk about the things that really matter. And don't worry, I will come back and we'll help one another to share our stories. But I can't get over to you enough, really, that whilst witnessing can be about marching with palms or looking after neighbours or 1,000 other kindnesses, there is also a time for speaking. So let me finish with what Paul says in Romans. Paul says this, he's quoting, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Well, yes, says Paul, but how can they call on the name when they haven't believed in it? And how can they believe in one when they've never heard of the name? And how can they know the name without someone telling it to them? Without someone telling it to them. So there, look, I've given you St. Paul, St. Peter, St. James, St. Francis, all to tell you to bear witness to your faith. Because otherwise, if you don't act on your faith, no one will know you have a faith, not even God.